nuance that you're talking about create the context. And I know from personal experience that students who are neophytes have come to me and showed me pictures in Tai Chi books and said, how come this doesn't look like what you do or what we do in class? And it might very well be somebody that has a lot of respect, like Yang Jingming or Zhong Chonghua that you've quoted earlier in his book. So the context sets up the evaluation of what you're looking at.
Let's go to the next one, number 7, on Exhibit 6B, grasping the bird's tail. Now this is described at page 9, line 25. Quote, grasping the bird's tail is our next movement. End of partial quote. That's, first of all, again, would you agree that grasping the bird's tail is a phrase that describes a Tai Chi Chuan posture?
Yes, sir.
And would you agree that the Tai Chi Chuan posture, grasping the bird's tail, was the basis of whatever you were doing?
Objection, vague and ambiguous.
May I also make a sort of an amendment to what I said?
Well, first of all, answer my question if you can. Is that Tai Chi Chuan posture, was that the basis of your performance in the video?
No, sir. The amendment that I wanted to make was in response to your question, is grasping the bird's tail a Tai Chi Chuan posture. Probably uniquely among many of the Tai Chi Chuan postures, grasping the bird's tail is actually a combination of postures, and therefore is only grasping the bird's tail in motion. You can't identify it otherwise. I just wanted to be more specific about my answer.
Here's Exhibit 6G, and do you see that these printed enlargements are from video frames of your performance in lower body Qi?
Yes, sir.
And what is the name of the exercise that you are performing here?
I called this grasping the bird's tail in this video.
If you turn to the next page of 6G, do you see Mr. Dunn's video images reflected?
Yes, sir.
And I'll represent to you, these are frames from Mr. Dunn's video, Tai Chi for Health, Young, Long Form. Is Mr. Dunn performing grasping the bird's tail?
Objection. Calls for an expert opinion, lacks foundation.
In the spirit of the same question that you asked me about the other movements, I would say yes.
Now, what if I told you, and I'm making this up, but what if I told you that I know for a fact that Mr. Dunn had no intent to perform grasping the bird's tail? Would that change your answer?
Certainly, because the only reason why I said yes to the previous question was given a context in which you had me believe that it was a part of a Tai Chi Chuan performance. And in that context, I would have said, okay, I believe that this is Tai Chi Chuan grasping the bird's tail. I cannot personally tell only from a still photo, and especially from a still photo that for both of us is not very good quality. It doesn't show either one of us at our best, I think.
Right.
What subtle differences might clue me into things about either one of our intent?
If I told you that Mr. Dunn is attempting to mimic your performance in the lower body grasping the bird's tail, would that alter your response?
Objection big and ambiguous, and I think it's an incomplete hypothetical and calls for an expert opinion.
I don't know how to answer that question, sir.
In other words, if I told you these were, and they're not, I'm making this up,
Right.
but if I told you these are photographs of Mr. Dunn trying as hard as he can to look like David Dorian Ross in lower body, what would you agree that he would not be doing Tai Chi Chuan by definition?
Yes.
Okay. And so the missing link, so to speak, is knowing what's in the mind of Mr. Dunn.
Yes, sir.
And similarly, the missing link would be knowing what's in the mind of David Dorian Ross in the first frames.
Yes, sir.
If you turn the page, there should be some Tai Chi Chuan books. I would say keep going. Yeah, there. Do these text excerpts identify various illustrations of grasping the bird's tail?
Well, in the same spirit as I answered the other question about the other postures, yes, sir, they do.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Ross. How many Tai Chi Chuan practitioners are there in the United States? Good, bad, ugly, whatever. How many do you think there are?
Objection calls for speculation.
Wow. I don't know. I really have to guess, and I don't want to do that.
Would you agree that there are easily tens of thousands, if perhaps millions? Would you agree?
I'd say that's a distinct possibility.
Would you agree that in China there are millions of Tai Chi Chuan practitioners?
Yes, sir.
And would you agree that amongst the millions who at least have some basic level of awareness of what they're doing, that grasping the bird's tail would be a phrase which they would identify as a particular posture?
Objection vague and ambiguous.
Assuming that you're asking those practitioners within the context of their Tai Chi experience, if they have learned or heard of or seen a movement called grasping the bird's tail, I'd say yes, that many of them would know that Tai Chi Chuan posture or sequence of movements called grasping the bird's tail.
Okay. In other words, would you expect that either in the United States or China or anywhere on the planet where Tai Chi Chuan is practiced on some serious level, that we would be able to go up to the practitioner and say, hello, can you strike a pose which would depict grasping the bird's tail, and that person would be able to look a little bit like you and Mr. Dunn?
I'll object that lacks foundation, that Mr. Dunn and Mr. Ross look the same, but other than that, you can answer the question.
Also calls for speculation.
Probably.
short of, and I don't mean this to be facetious, but perhaps to gain a deeper insight, short of hooking someone up to a lie detector, how would you know if anyone is really performing a Tai Chi Chuan exercise or just faking it or attempting to deceive you?
Objection calls for an expert opinion.
But I appreciate your question. I think that, as I said before, Neigong is an art of subtlety. And the more practiced and learned and experienced you are in the internal arts, a fundamental part of your practice has been about developing sensitivity. It comes out very strongly in one of the other associated practices associated to Tai Chi Chuan, which is Tui Shou, push hands, where we develop something called Ting Jing, listening energy, the energy of sensitivity. It is an essential skill.
That's part of pushing hands?
Part of pushing hands. It's an example of what is considered to be an essential skill in this art form. So an advanced practitioner devotes himself to being more and more sensitive, be more and more aware of subtlety, of nuance, so that when observing an individual performing a movement or practicing on their own in the park, that they pick up on, and maybe even moment to moment, when you're doing Tai Chi and not doing Tai Chi, or when you sit down and start and say, there was no intention, there was no focus, there was no E in that practice. That was not Tai Chi Chuan. And specifically in the practice of Tai Chi Qigong, where the intention is, or there is a purposeful lack of martial intention in Tai Chi Qigong.
I know I'm going to regret asking this, but I'll ask you anyway. Is it the case that what we've been calling an intention is actually more than an intention? It's the reality of the moment that one is in practicing Tai Chi Chuan?
Objection, vague and ambiguous.
Could you be more?
Sure. Let's say that you and Mr. Dunn go down to the park to practice as colleagues Tai Chi Chuan, and that you're having a very good day, and Mr. Dunn is not having a good day. There's no flow, there's no focus, for whatever reason. Maybe he's thinking about spaghetti, okay? Would it be the case that although your bodies are doing the same thing, you are in fact practicing Tai Chi Chuan and Mr. Dunn in fact is not? Is that a concept that you would agree to?
Given the situations you're asking, I'd say no. You're close.
All right, what am I missing here?
This happens frequently. We go down and you're thinking about spaghetti or your girlfriend or something else distracting, and you may lose your focus and concentration in the moment. And yet, within your training and within your inner intention, there is I'm looking for another word besides intent, so I can use a synonym. In Chinese, the word is yi. It is the development of the willpower, the development of the ability to focus your mind, your heart, your visualization, your intention. Even if you don't do it well, or if you lose your focus from a moment, you could still be doing Tai Chi Chuan because that's what you wanted to do. Now that's distinct from a practice in which you stood up and did not want to have a martial focus in your practice. In fact, you had a different focus entirely. And those are two distinct situations.
looking at 6B, and because of the tyranny of the clock, I won't go through the same questions on each one, but generally, for example, on number 8, snake spits out its tongue. Would you agree that there is a Tai Chi Chuang, is it a posture by that name?
Yeah, also this one has a sequence to it, but yes, I would say yes. It's a posture.
I've been using the word posture. Is that, is there a difference between a posture, an exercise, and a movement? Are they different things?
Yes.
All right. What is a posture to your way of thinking?
Tai Chi Chuan, as a martial art, and as a martial art which depends upon movement, motion, has both a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Mm-hmm.
If you take a still frame of what the beginning or the middle or the end looks like, you could call that a posture. It is a static shape created by your body. The effectiveness of using Tai Chi Chuan as a martial art, however, depends upon your ability to move through space.
Right. In other words, you're not just standing there like a statue holding a posture, but in fact you're moving to and through whatever posture is depicted in the frames, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Now you might, as a teacher, hold up a part of the sequence to a student and say, this is the posture that is incorrect in your movement, so you need to study this posture and make this better.
I understand. I've heard it said that there are 108 forms.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the same as 108 postures, or what does that refer to?
Well, it's an easy shorthand to name them by the end shape. So you say, this is the posture, and what you're really looking at is the final position of the technique.
But it's really a description of the movement leading up to that end posture, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, for example, we could pick any of these. Snake spits out its tongue, and that's simply a shorthand phrase for the movement, which is what one does in Tai Chi Chuan.
Yes.
And it just happens that snake spits out its tongue has a particular physical posture as one might be photographed at the end of that movement.
Yes, sir.
And all of the movements leading up to the last nanosecond of that particular form, there is there not, an objective, verifiable perfection that one strives for?
Yes, sir.
Each in his or her own way.
Yes, sir.
If you're 5'2" and real fat, you're going to look different than someone who's 6'5" and real thin.
So the objective, verifiable completion has less to do with what it looks like or what it's called, and more to do with the adherence to the basic principles we spoke of earlier. So the 5'2" very fat versus the 6 foot long, lean, lanky may look on the outside really different, but internally, if they're adhering to these basic principles found in Tai Chi classics and passed down by teachers throughout generations, then you could say, yes, they're both doing Qigong, Tai Chi Chuan, Tai Chi Qigong, whatever it is that they're doing.
But the short, fat person and the tall, lanky person and everybody in between, all those millions in between, they're all trying to do a movement which has an ideal perfection, correct?
Are you asking me about a Platonic ideal, or is there somebody in China somewhere who has the perfect posture?
Let me ask you this. Could a person with no arms and no legs practice Tai Chi Chuan?
That's a really good question.
I just thought of it.
Yeah. Certainly the evaluation of what they were doing would have to take into account the fact that they would not be able to do certain things which would necessarily be a part of somebody else's Tai Chi Chuan. I mean, Tai Chi Chuan, as a martial art, has to have precise placement of hands and feet and eyes, etc. And a person with no arms couldn't do that. However, they could set their intention and have chi flowing in the same exact way as if they had arms.
Now, you've had students of all kinds of body shapes, right? You've had the short, fat people, and you've had the tall, lanky people, and probably a lot of shapes in between, right?
Yes, sir.
And don't you routinely teach and correct the students as to how they may improve the movement of a particular form?
Yes, sir.
I mean, I'm just imagining, but wouldn't you say, no, John, that's way too fast, or Joe, your hands are too low, or Sally, can you get your feet more apart, Harry, can you relax your head, etc., etc. Are those observations that are just typically made by an instructor to students? I'm very sorry. I didn't know it was on.
It is my practice in teaching a class to set up, I don't want to overuse this word, but a context, because I learned from a particular set of teachers in a particular style. So when I make corrections, or when I talk about pacing or use of body shape, I make it pretty clear that we're doing so based on what I have learned and what I know. So by making corrections, I say you're way too fast, or your hand should be over here. It's in the context of Beijing style Yang form Tai Chi Chuan, or in the context of 8 pieces of brocade as taught to me by Ken Cohen, or something like that.
And there are, in fact, precise physical things that one does with the body that go into a characterization of whether or not that person is in fact performing a Tai Chi Chuan movement.
Could you say that again, please?
Yeah, if I'm one of your students, and I am particularly gifted so that after only 2 months, I am performing snake spits out its tongue really well. Would you tell me that?
Certainly.
And if I'm a student who comes to your class and I take a coffee cup and throw it against the wall and I say, that's my version of snake spits out its tongue, would you give me points for trying? I mean, would that be an allowed subjective interpretation of that movement?
Well, I think the answer is I wouldn't let him stay in my class if that's the way he wanted to do it, but I have taught a lot of students whose forms don't look like mine or anybody else's in the class, and I say, well, you know what? You're still doing Tai Chi Chuan because I can see other things. I can see adherence to certain principles.
Okay. Part of the way that you were judged in winning medals and receiving praise from time to time was how well you were able to move your body within an expected precision, correct?
Yes, sir.
In other words, you and others might do snake spits out its tongue, but you did it better on some level. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Slower, more gracefully, less tension in the body, whatever. But you were each trying to do a form, but yours was better. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
But you were each doing a similar exercise, correct? In other words, you're trying to do the same ideal of perfection.
Yes.
Let's go off the record just for a second.
506 off the record.
Thanks. How late can we go to?
Okay, we are back on the record. The time is 5:15.
Mr. Ross, if you look again at 6B, item 8 is snake spits out its tongue. That, in fact, is a, strike that. There is a Tai Chi Chuan movement known as snake spits out its tongue, correct?
Yes, sir.
And what did you call the movement that you performed?
Snake sticks out its tongue.
And at exhibit 6, page 11, lines 19 to 20, you stated, quote, "Our next movement is called snake sticks out his tongue, sink down, comma, turn to the right, comma, tap the right heel down and backhand with the right open palm." Now, end of partial quote. I'm going to show you an exhibit which is 6H. And do you observe excerpts of still frames wherein you are performing a movement which you describe as snake sticks out his tongue?
Yes, sir.
Is one of the distinctions that you've made today that Tai Chi Chuan has a martial characteristic and that Qigong does not?
Not precisely. The distinction I'm making is that Tai Chi Chuan has a martial characteristic, and that overall Qigong does not necessarily have a martial characteristic, and in many, maybe we could say most cases does not.
To the extent that you had a martial characteristic in the video, would that make your movement a Tai Chi Chuan movement?
Injection vague and ambiguous.
By the word characteristic, do you mean to say intention?
Yes.
All lacks foundation that that's what's in the video.
Well, the absence of martial intention is what makes it not Tai Chi Chuan. It's one of the things which makes it not Tai Chi Chuan.
Look at the bottom of page 11 of the transcript, which is Exhibit 6. And beginning at line 25, you state, partial quote, shift forward, palm strike, right palm, palm strike, left hand. And then a little bit later on, you state at line 4, shift forward, palm strike left, palm strike right. When you were saying palm strike left and right and so forth, was that combined with a martial blow or a martial striking of the hands?
Well, it's always a challenge to find a word which will get the viewer of the video to perform a movement in the way that you wanted to perform it. So I'm sitting doing a voiceover trying to think of, what word can I use that'll get them to do that. And in this situation, the best word that I could come up with was strike, but that was not meant to get them to be fighting or to practice a martial technique.
Was there any, do you recall, was there any acceleration of movement at the time you were saying strike or anything like that? In other words, you were still doing slow circular movements?
Yes, sir.
And when you said palm strike left or right, what did you intend to connote by using that word? Strike.
As opposed to a gentle extension of the hand or a fist, or in contrast to the earlier instruction to backhand, palm strike was the best word I could come up with to create this shape and push it forward.
Would you say that these were linear, focused moves?
Objection, vague and ambiguous.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Okay. As you performed them on the video, were they focused moves?
Objection, vague and ambiguous. Videos speak for themselves.
Well, sir, everything in the videos were focused. Focused and attention is one of the overarching characteristics.
Okay.
The focus was not martial, however.
If you look at Exhibit 6H and turn the page, do you see depictions of Mr. Dunn performing the snake sticks out his tongue movement?
Again, in the spirit that I've answered the other questions, yes, sir, I do.
And as you, are there actually some attached text depictions of the same movement?
There is one. The other one is mislabeled.
Okay, which one is mislabeled?
The last page here.
Where number 91, white snake turns its body and spits poison. That does not correspond with the pictures, is that what you're saying?
Right.
Okay. What about the pictures on the preceding page?
I recognize those, yes, sir.
All right. I want to be sure that I understand something. We happen to be talking about number 8, snake spits out its tongue right now. As you performed it on the lower body video, was that a performance of Tai Chi Chuan Qigong?
Tai Chi Qigong?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
That's what that was.
Well, it was not strictly, it was something new. It was Qi. It was meant to be a crossover mainstreaming interpretation based upon ancient classical principles, filling a new niche. It has its heaviest influence from Tai Chi Qigong.
Is it fair to say that you were taking a number of classic Tai Chi Chuan forms, but using them to perform Qigong exercises? Is that a fair way to put it?
Actually, this is very similar to the question you asked me earlier, and I'd say that's a pretty fair description of what Tai Chi Qigong is. Yes, sir.
On the subject of snake spits out its tongue, page 11, let's see. Yeah. What is there in the words that you used, beginning at page 11, line 19, through as far as you'd like to go, I guess through page 12, line 24? Are any of those words inconsistent with Tai Chi Chuan?
Objection, vague and ambiguous.
Join.
Do you follow my question?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It is essentially the same question as looking only at a movement without words or without instruction. You're taking another piece out of context.
Well, it's not essentially the same question. It may be similar
All right.
in design, but it's at the opposite end of that spectrum. And basically it says, forget what the video may even be showing.
Right.
Look at the words that were spoken. Are any of the words spoken completely consistent with Qigong and completely inconsistent with Tai Chi Chuan?
Objection, vague and ambiguous as to consistent, inconsistent.
Also calls for an expert opinion.
I would not say that it's necessarily inconsistent with either thing, with either Tai Chi Chuan nor Tai Chi Qigong, that the consistency would depend upon the context.
For example, in all of these different words, I mean, there's a lot of things. You know, right palm strike, left palm strike, inhale, sit back, exhale, turn right, so forth. All of these different words that you selected, are any of those words nonsensical in the context of Tai Chi Chuan?
Objection, calls for an expert opinion, vague and ambiguous.
I would say no.
Do you see any reference to energy or inner intention?
You're talking about on page 11, line 19 through page 1224.
Right now I am.
No, sir. Not within that.
In fact, can you recall any words in any of the 3 videos that are uniquely descriptive of either Qigong or Tai Chi Chuan Qigong?
Objection, vague and ambiguous.
Which I guess is Tai Chi Qigong.
Right.
Right. Objection, vague and ambiguous, lacks foundation, calls for an expert opinion.
And also, sir, I can't remember verbatim the scripting of many of the videos. I'm sorry.
Well, let me see if I can improve the question. You've said a lot of things today, but one thing you said was you have to know what my intent was, and you've explained that very articulately. You've said you have to know what my words were, and you've said you have to see what my physical movements were. So far, you're nodding affirmatively. You would agree with that. Focusing only on the words that you chose to say and in fact did say. Can you recall any words which, upon hearing them, you would say, I would only say such a thing if this were truly Tai Chi Qigong, or if this were Qigong. I would never say such a thing if this were Tai Chi Chuan.
Same objections as the previous question.
Because of the nature of the relationship between Tai Chi Qigong and Tai Chi Chuan, the way I would answer that question would almost be in the reverse. That in order to make a different tape, in order to make a Tai Chi Chuan tape, I would absolutely have to include words which are missing from these scripts. And those would be words about precision of bodily posture, intention, use of martial technique, etc. And we assiduously worked on not having any reference to those things. As much as I could in my mind as I was doing them and writing the script and making the voiceovers and everything, stay away from any of those references.
Why did you do that?
Because my intention was to create something new, to create something that was not Tai Chi Chuan, that was not, strictly speaking, Tai Chi Qigong, that was a new genre that hadn't been fulfilled. And a lot of this has to do with the work that I've been doing for years in the fitness community, So it was a continuation, actually, of stuff that I'd already done.